again, everyone, and welcome to Badger Breakdown, brought to you by U.S. Cellular. I'm Mike Lucas from UWBadgers.com. I'm joined by the voice of the Badgers, Matt Lepay. We're almost a week removed from that very special day and night here at Camp Randall Stadium, the 408 and the 608, and I'm still having trouble digesting the numbers.
So am I. I mean, the next afternoon after the basketball game, maybe later in the afternoon, it was like, wow, this guy ran for 408 yards. And still several days later, you're trying to make sense of it because it was a big game against a good team. You know, it's hard against the worst team in America. It's unlikely that someone would rush for 400 plus yards, but to do it against a Nebraska team that came here pretty confident, I think, that it could play with the Badgers, if not beat the Badgers, and for Melvin to do that, it's just remarkable.
It seemed like every time we were looking up, he was at that second level of the defense and making somebody miss. And Gary Anderson spoke about it on Monday. The angles that Gordon is able to take and eliminate the tackle angles is special.
Yeah, it must be one of those situations where on video can only show you so much. If you're an opposing defensive player, you probably can only appreciate it, if that's the right word. Maybe a defensive player would have another word for it, but you can't fully comprehend how good he is and how gifted he is physically until you try to tackle him. I mean, it was just, you're right, the offensive line, tight ends, fullbacks, even the receivers down the field, they were blocking well, but Melvin was still ridiculous. Most running backs, those plays that are blocked for 7 or 8, can get you 15 or 20. Melvin gets you 30 or 40 or more.
It would be virtually impossible to pick out one run among all those runs, but that first touchdown run was significant only because the Badgers were trailing 17-3 at that time.
Yeah, the little hurdle over the safety along the sideline. Yeah, that was a 62-yard run. And you're right. I think over time that's going to be easy to forget in a game where Wisconsin wins going away and a tailback named Melvin Gordon rushes for 408 yards. Might be fairly easy to forget that at one point the home team was down by 14 points. But yeah, it started to turn there, and then he had another run where he had nothing at the point of attack, bounced it out to his right, turned what was probably a no yardage play into another big yardage play. It's a lot of highlights for one game, that's for sure.
Melvin Gordon, a minute afterwards, said he was motivated in part by the fumbling. And that's also sometimes what you have to remember trying to keep this game in context. The ball is on the turf a lot for Wisconsin, very uncharacteristic of the offense. Put the defense in a hole.
Yeah, it did. That's the one thing. You look at the points that Nebraska scored. Nebraska had the short field to get most of those points. So the defense continues to play really, really well. The linebackers are racking up some big tackle stats in that game against Nebraska. But you're right, the Badgers, a couple of early turnovers. Nebraska was doing a good job. In the early portion of the game, for that duel, Amir Abdullah versus Melvin Gordon, there was a time Abdullah, it didn't last long, but that first quarter, I think he had the edge. He looked good, Abdullah, early. We didn't know how effective he was going to be on that knee, but after a while, it was Melvin's show.
And normally when you have a player named Defensive Player of the Week, he gets a little bit more attention than Joe Schobert, but he was completely overshadowed by Gordon as well.
Which is probably fine with Joe Schobert. I mean, watch the talk during the week how quiet he is, kind of a flatliner, which doesn't seem prototypical of a linebacker or a defensive player, maybe in general. But I think he was fine with that. There was also one other record broken on Saturday. Tanner McAvoy. Most rushing yards by a quarterback in a season in Wisconsin history. Brooks Bollinger, who was 1, 2, 3.
Went totally
He's on 2, 3, 4.
Yeah,
it really did. It went unnoticed to everybody, including Tanner, because we were telling him earlier in the week. He said, "Really? Oh, cool." And so a little sidelight there, but you're right. It was Melvin's day. And now, I mean, it's not do it again, but it's keep winning, keep playing at a high level against two border rivals now to conclude the regular season.
And you start with Iowa, and they've been heartbreakers in the past for a lot of things Wisconsin's wanted to accomplish.
I think of, 10 years ago, right? When a Rose Bowl was at stake for Wisconsin, and Iowa ended up crashing the party there, so to speak. Wisconsin
I think when
was
they
out
spoiled
of
Barry's final game here.
1 year later,
yeah.
But I was thinking in 04, there was a Rose Bowl trip.
Oh, absolutely. That was after the loss
won.
at Michigan State, and the Badgers were back in the picture again, but
absolutely.
couldn't pull it off.
Yep, in 05, Barry's final regular season game. Iowa did that to Wisconsin, but Wisconsin has done the same to Iowa. You think of 2010, the week after the Badgers had won here in Madison against Ohio State. You're wondering, boy, can they regroup? And it was a really entertaining game against the Hawkeyes. The fake punt, and then Monty Ball scores late in the game. There's been a lot of drama. This is a true rivalry. It's 43 wins to 42 and a couple ties in there. This isn't a lopsided rivalry. This is, and since they played for this Heartland Trophy, it's 4-4. So both teams have landed their punches.
And since no one in Iowa City can explain the ebb and flow to their season, when the good Iowa and the bad Iowa, we won't even try to explain it.
Saw good Iowa against Illinois. They ran the ball well, what you expect to see generally watching an Iowa team. Mark Weissman had a 100-plus yard rushing game. Saw the really good Iowa against Northwestern. Jumped on them early in the game. Special teams, they block a punt, score a touchdown. Weissman gets involved early. Jake Rudock is throwing the ball very, very effectively. Saw the really bad Iowa at Minnesota. So they tend to give you the good Iowa at home, though. They have the one loss against Iowa State. They've had a world of trouble with Iowa State, but you generally see the good Iowa at Kinnick Stadium.
The bottom line is there are a lot more eyes on this football team and number 25.
Yeah, I mean, as last year, Iowa did a good job against Melvin Gordon. Wisconsin won the game, but Melvin, it was a tough go. It was 60-some yards in that ball game. Openly discussed it earlier in the week. He was hearing it because everybody thought he was going to go to Iowa. Had a change of heart, became a Badger. Kinnick Stadium it's a great stadium, very loud. Players hear it, and maybe they feed off of it a little bit. It probably varies team to team, but Melvin heard it, and it's not a bad thing. You know, for a guy, if you could still be hungry after a 408-yard game, I think Melvin Gordon's still hungry.
And the Heisman formula is pretty simple right now. The team has to win, and Melvin has to contribute to that winning.
Yeah, and I really do think, Mike, we're in a position right now, or not Melvin Gordon and his teammates are in a position now that there's the hashtag Gordon to Gotham. I think kind of that's that next step now. If they keep winning, and Melvin Gordon has a lot to do with it, he's going to go there. He might win it.
Now the prize is in reach.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there. You know, there are a few other players in America you can say the same thing about, but it's kind of fun to know that one of them is a Badger.
For Matt Lepay, I'm Mike Lucas. Thanks for watching Badger Breakdown, brought to you by U.S. Cellular.